So we are good to go. I'll start the session. A very good evening to everyone present here. We are gathered today on this virtual platform to welcome Mr. Kaushik Madhavan, Vice President, Mobility Division in Frost & Sullivan for the Industry Expert Connect series. Mr. Kaushik did his bachelor's in Mechanical Engineering in RV College of Engineering, Bangalore, India. He completed his MS in Automotive Systems Engineering in RWTH, Aachen, Germany. He is here today to deliver his insights on transformational trends impacting mobility. Mr. Kaushik comes with over 20 years of experience in automotive industry, especially strategy consulting and market research. He has previously worked with Nissan Motor India in product planning. He has worked with cross-functional teams in charting out the passenger vehicle product technology roadmap for Nissan and Datsun in India. He specializes in competitive benchmarking, market strategies, product portfolio, market expansion strategies, and emerging technology evaluation. So thank you again for your valuable time. The virtual stage is yours now.
Thank you very much, Sarvesh. It's really wonderful to be here on this platform, interacting with you all. It takes me back, I don't know, 20, 21 years when I did my master's as well. In a university setting where we had interaction with a lot of industry people, and it was really an enriching and learning experience, that we witnessed. So I'm very happy to be a part of this. I hope I'll get as many questions as possible. Please feel free to put it on the Q&A or the chat box. In the end, we can have a 10 or a 15-minute question and answer session. So thanks once again, Sarveshwar, for inviting me to this. I'm very happy to share some of our perspectives from Frost & Sullivan in terms of where we think the automotive industry is heading, the mobility industry is heading, some of the opportunities for you, young entrepreneurs, would-be entrepreneurs, some business opportunities, something you can look out for, something for you to focus on. I'm not going to talk too much, technical. I'll try to keep it as generic as possible, as they call it, a 30,000 feet view or a 40,000 feet view. So please feel free to ask questions, later. I'd love an interactive, engaging session. So with that, let me share my screen. Just tell me, Sarveshwar, if my screen is visible, if you can just confirm that to me.
Yes, sir, it is visible now.
Yeah, it is perfect. Let me just hide this. Excellent. So welcome everyone. I know it's a Friday evening. I'm sure you've all got plans. So I'll keep it a little interesting, at any point in time, if you have anything to add, anything, that you want to share, please feel free. This is supposed to be a two-way session, right? So today I have a few topics I want to cover with you, right? To start with the economy, where we think the industry is going, right? The Indian economy is going. Connectivity and convergence. Today everybody talks about connected vehicles, right? So just to give you a perspective on what does it mean, for connected vehicles, right? I'm sure many of you come from diverse backgrounds, right? Engineering, science, commerce, maybe even arts. So it's very important that you look at the mobility industry as something that everybody has an opportunity to grow in, right? It's not automotive anymore, right? It's not cars or motorcycles or trucks and buses anymore. It's the mobility industry, and that presents a whole lot of new opportunities for non-automotive related sectors as well. And that's what I want to talk about today, right? Urbanization, of course, heterogeneous society, right? This is something that's influencing the mobility market in a very big way. Your purchase decisions, your perceptions, your preferences is actually driving the mobility industry. Health, wellness, and well-being, and what we think is the future, right? Apologies. Some of the top transformational themes that we have seen affecting the global market, irrespective of whether it is mobility or healthcare or whatever it is, right? We've seen the rise of health, wellness, and well-being. Today, everybody is talking about investing in good health, right? Investing in fitness, overall wellness, that is becoming a priority these days. So every business model that is going to revolve around this is going to gain precedence. We are all living in a connected world. So as part of our connected living ecosystem, we are looking at a connected office, a connected home, and a connected mobility, right? So all these three put together, you're talking about connected living, a seamless integration between the different parts. So how does this open up opportunities? I'm going to talk about that as well. Heterogeneous society today, we are living in a diverse world, more than ever before, right? And that brings its own set of challenges. We have seen, in the past 12 to 18 months, some incidents, globally, which has driven the cause of having an inclusive heterogeneous society, and that is also something that is going to affect the overall mobility market too going forward. um, Data, you all know data very well, so you're all part of a very premier institution, and data monetization and data analytics is something that you understand very, very well, so I'm not going to talk about that. What's important is the concept of a zero world, right? So what does a concept of a zero world mean, right? I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes from now. I have a couple of slides on that. So these are some of the overarching themes that you can think of, some transformational themes that have a far reaching effect on multiple sectors and multiple industries, not just mobility. So let me start with the future of the Indian economy. Manufacturing, is expected to contribute close to 22 to 23% by 2030, right? In 2018, it was about 18 to 19%. That's a significant increase. But what is also very important is those pies marked in red, right? Hotels, transport, hospitality industry, for example, finance, real estate, public administration. These are also expected to account for a fairly significant 60 to 61% by 2030. So as you can see, these are your sectors that have a far reaching effect, not only on mobility, but on energy as well, right? On health, wellness, and well-being. So we will see a lot more investment in this space as we move forward. Now, you must have all heard about the government talking about India becoming a $5 trillion industry or an economy by 2025. Now we are talking about trillion-dollar states, right? Maharashtra is expected to become the first trillion-dollar economy by 2028 or 2030. I mean, just imagine, it's not the country anymore that is driving economy, but the states, right? So states will start driving economy, and states will have their own GDP. Now, the interesting part here is, in India, we've got states that equal the GDP of some small Western countries, right? So that is the power of states driving economy. We will see states like, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Uttar Pradesh. These, big states will start driving the growth of Indian economy going forward. A city as a customer, taking another step down, we are talking about cities, right? You must have heard, Surat is the diamond capital, Bangalore is the IT capital, Tirupur in Tamil Nadu is the textile capital. So you will have cities that will also start becoming a customer for specific sectors, right? And they will start driving economy. So anything related to diamond processing, the diamond industry will be centered around Surat. Anything related to textile mills, fabrics, coloring, everything related to textiles will be centered around Tirupur. So cities will become hubs, for certain sectors, so certain industries, and they will drive business going forward. And cities will become customers, for big houses, big business houses, big business models as well. So I think that is the way we are looking at it. Not just the country looking at, India driving GDP, but going down a couple of steps below, states driving GDP and economy, and even cities driving GDP and economy. Now, we put together a list of, let's say, about 7 or 8 high growth Indian industries. everybody knows about e-commerce, right? I'm not going to talk about it. The likes of Flipkarts, Amazons, so on and so forth, right? Online education, you have seen that as well over the past 12 to 18 months as a result of the pandemic. Of course, online education, has seen a significant acceleration. Um, but what's very important is the likes of food delivery, right? The Swiggies and Zomatos of the world. Look at how they have grown in the past 12 to 18 months. I mean, who would have thought 2 or 3 years ago that, the food delivery market, would be, if you said by 2030, it's going to be a 35 or a $40 billion market. Nobody would have believed you, right? But today that's becoming reality. Sports leagues, not only cricket, of course, but other sports as well, kabaddi, badminton, football. I think this is again a high growth market, gaming and esports. So not only, so you see here, these have an interconnection between multiple sectors. You've got mobility, you've got healthcare, you've got IT services, you've got, in real estate, infrastructure, you name it. They all become a part of these high growth industries as we go forward. Now, the second mega trend is connectivity and convergence, right? Today, we are already talking about 5G rollout. Which will significantly reduce, latency application, right? Look at the bandwidth that we're talking about. You're talking about bandwidths of 1 Gbps, 2, 3 Gbps, right? So with 5G coming in, we will have a lot more data being generated on the one hand. That will also give opportunities to startups that are involved in data analytics, right? How do you make sense out of the large amounts of data that is being generated? And that is where, a lot of the startups today are focusing their efforts on. They have the analytics capability, but they don't have access to the data needed. And that is where the bigger companies, the OEMs, right? Or the bigger companies who have access to data, but do not have the analytical capability. That is where the collaboration opportunity is. What will 6G look like, right? Certain countries are already talking about experimenting with 6G. Could 2030 be the beginning of 6G? I don't know. Good possibility there. You're talking about big data of 1 TB per second, right? 1,000 times of what we have now with 1 GB per second is as a speed for 5G. You're talking about TB per second. Just can you imagine the speeds that you can achieve with a peak data transfer speed of about 1 TB per second? You've got quantum communication, you've got optical networks, microsecond latency. So it's going to open up a whole lot of new opportunities when 6G will eventually come in. I don't know, maybe in 8 years, maybe in 10 years. I don't know when, but it's not a question of if, just a question of when. So I think 6G will open up a huge set of opportunities as well. Now, what is the impact of connectivity, right? This is an example. I know I'm taking an automotive example, please bear with me. But that opens up opportunities for everybody else as well. So this is an example of what Volkswagen has done. Volkswagen has a platform called Rio. So Rio essentially is an end-to-end platform for commercial vehicles, right? So it looks at, when we say commercial vehicles, talking about trucks and buses, right? It starts right from order management when somebody places an order to ship a cargo from point A to point B. Right from then to transport management, fleet management, asset management, warehouse, rating, billing, financing, accounting, and reverse logistics as well. So as you can see here, the entire end-to-end journey for any commercial vehicle fleet operator is on a single platform. Now that means it opens up the opportunity for other service providers as well to come on board and start offering services. So you don't have to, as a startup, as an entrepreneur, your worry should be on what kind of differentiation you can provide in the form of a service. That should be your goal. Forget about developing a platform, right? That's already there. You can always leverage an existing platform, but focus on what differentiation you can bring in. And as an entrepreneur, I know many of you will become entrepreneurs, start developing your own companies, founding your own companies. This should be your focus, right? Service differentiation, going forward, the revenue generation, not only in the automotive industry, but from other sectors as well. The revenue is going to come from service, right? Product as a service, right? Product based revenue generation is gone, right? Now we are going to talk about service based revenue regeneration, and that is what enhances a long term relationship development with your customers, be it mobility, be it healthcare, IT services, you name it. So that's the way we are looking at it. uh, Data monetization, this is an example, right? Now this is a very interesting example. On an average, about anywhere between 15 to 100 parameters can be collected from cars, right? From your vehicle speed, engine speed, oil temperature, water coolant temperature, multiple things, right? You can build today about 50 to 60 use cases, right, around the data that is being collected, and start building new business models. Today, a lot of companies in Europe are using the data and starting to offer tailored or customized offerings or businesses, or services to specific sets of customers, right? So you can cluster customers based on their driving behavior, their age, their demographics, and then start offering, let's say, for example, customized insurance solutions, customized warranty solutions. So data monetization, again, is going to be very, very critical going forward. Like I said before, availability of data is not an issue, right? You've got tons and tons of data, but how do you leverage it? How do you make sense out of it? And how do you monetize it? That is going to be the differentiator for any new business, any new startup, any new entrepreneur as well. Connectivity in two-wheelers. I mean, today, many of you, must have seen, you've got smart helmets. So in the helmet, you've got a visualization or a display of, let's say, your speed, your body vitals, your turn-by-turn navigation, and even your telephone connectivity, right? So just imagine you are wearing a helmet, you're riding a motorcycle or a two-wheeler. You don't need to take your eyes off the road. On the head, you've got a display. On the visor of the helmet, you've got a display, as you can see it here in the picture, right? So this also leads to a whole lot of new characteristics, driver behavior characteristic improvement, vehicle behavior improvement, and most importantly, in a country like India, which unfortunately is the accident capital of the world, these kind of technologies are also going to enable reduction of fatalities, accidents, just saving lives as we go forward. Your connectivity can save lives, right? So if we are able to bring these technologies and make them affordable for the customer, we can see a huge reduction in accidents and fatalities going forward. So let's look at the next mega trend, urbanization, right? Like I said before, Indian cities are comparable to certain global countries. If you look at the boxes that we have shown there, the Delhi NCR region, with a GDP of about 330 or $340 billion is comparable to Greece in 2030, right? Which also has about 329 or $330 billion. Mumbai, with about $375 billion, is comparable to the economy of New Zealand. Similarly, Kolkata, comparable to the economy of Ukraine. So we will see cities driving businesses, right? And growth, economic growth, as I mentioned before, comparable to certain countries. So mega cities in India will drive business. Now, as a consequence of that, mega cities will give rise to mega regions. You already have the NCR region, then you have the Pune, Mumbai mega region. Then you've got the Chennai, Kanchipuram mega region. Maybe going forward, the Chennai-Bangalore corridor will become one huge mega region. Who knows, right? So we will see mega regions in India, and around which you will see investment in mega corridors, right? So it's a sequence, right? You've got mega cities, then you've got mega regions, then you've got mega corridors. So mega corridors will again start developing and driving business. So for example, we are already talking about the Delhi Mumbai corridor, right? So just imagine whatever is the distance, 1,500 kilometers or 2,000 kilometers, the entire corridor will be lined with multiple businesses. Could be, for example, obviously restaurants and hotels. If you are going to talk about electrification, you could see multiple charging stations, public charging stations along this route. Number two. Number three, rest houses, fuel stations, and hospitalities, hotels, you name it. So a mega corridor is going to drive business in multiple ways, right? So that is what we are going to witness. So mega corridors in India by 2030 is expected to house about 30% of the nation's population. Just imagine, right? So it's a very concentrated area, in terms of real estate, but the economy or the population is going to be so high and so concentrated that they will become economic centers or growth centers going forward. So that is the way we see urbanization developing in India, with mega cities leading to mega regions, then leading to mega corridors. An unfortunate consequence of that is mega slums, right? So we have all seen how big slums in India have developed in Mumbai, in Delhi, in Chennai, in Bangalore. That is going to continue, right? So we will see. So you can see an economic snapshot of Dharavi, which we did in 2019. Over 1 million in population, right? $1 billion of annual turnover. I mean, who would have imagined, right? A slum or a mega slum can contribute so significantly to the economic growth of a city. I mean, today, if you look, the concentration is so high. Dharavi has probably the highest concentration of your satellite TV connections, your refrigerators, smart TVs, smartphones. So in such a small area, you've got such a high concentration, and that is going to drive economy as well. So while on the one hand, we have some very, very positive, growth elements, this is something that we need to focus on as well, mega slums, in terms of how can we bridge the gap that is there today between, let's say, the economically well-off section of the society or the city and the mega slums as well. The future of infrastructure. What is going to happen with infrastructure investments and development going forward? We are expected to see a 50% increase in major ports by 2030, right? You can see on the India map on the left side, the ones in red are the new ones that are going to come up in the next 8 to 10 years. So that is going to significantly change the way we are going to transport goods and transport cargo. So our cargo handling capacity is going to increase 2 to 2.5x, right? As part of the Sagarmala project, Sagarmala initiative. So very clearly, it is not just land-based impact that we are going to see. Even sea routes, and ports, investment in ports is going to witness a huge growth going forward. Similarly, rail traffic, we expect a 3x, almost 3x increase from 2019 to 2030, from about 1.4 billion tons to about 3.5 billion tons by 2030, right? Dedicated freight corridors, freight convoys. I mean, classic example, I'm sure you all saw on TV when the first wave of the pandemic hit, when there was an oxygen shortage all over the country. We saw trucks being transported on trains, on dedicated corridors between cities. So that is the kind of, efficiency in rail traffic we are going to see. An interconnected, right, mode of transport, rail, freight, air freight, sea freight, and road freight as well. Now, in terms of the future transport infrastructure plans, again, we are going to look at dedicated freight corridors, right? Wherever there is a huge concentration of the manufacturing ecosystem, right? Between Ahmedabad and Mumbai, Bangalore, Chennai, Bangalore, Hyderabad, or Delhi, Kolkata. These are going to become hubs. The entire road, the corridors are going to become hubs for investment in transport related infrastructure. Now, this brings me to the next mega trend, which is heterogeneous society. It is something that's very, very interesting to you as well. I'm sure you're all going to be part of it. Another 20 years, India is going to enjoy a rise in working age population. Compare to China, which is actually seeing a downward trend. So this is good news for us. That means we will have a significantly more investment in growth, in infrastructure, and also in spending power, to say the least. As a consequence of that, the elderly population in India is also going to grow, right, by almost 2x 1.75 times between 2015 and 2030. Right. Of course, we will see a lot more aged population. That means the investment in geriatric care, for example, right? Senior assisted living real estate, right? All your old age homes which have really good facilities, healthcare facilities, are going to come up. Health insurance, lifestyle products. So although we are going to see an increase in the elderly population, that brings along with it growth opportunities in specific sectors as well. Geriatric care being one of the biggest among them. And India is the youngest nation in the world with close to 370 million plus Gen Zers, right? I'm sure many of you fall in that category. I don't, unfortunately. So you are going to be the drivers of the Indian economy going forward. So that means, all new business models that are aimed at the Gen Zs, right, is going to become usership based, right? So there's a transition in the mobility industry, in the automotive industry, from a ownership based model to a usership based model. What does it mean? Ownership is your typical, you purchase a car and you own it for 10 years and you sell it. A usership based model is what a lot of these OEMs today are offering, subscription based models, right? Today, you don't need to buy a car. You can subscribe to a car, right? Maruti is doing it, Hyundai is doing it, Mahindra is doing it. You can subscribe to a car for a month, for 2 months, 3 months, use it, give it back, get another car, use it for a few months, give it back, get another car, use it for a few months, give it back, and have no car, right? So that flexibility, which subscription brings, is actually going to drive vehicle ownership as well. Sorry, vehicle usership, right? So that's what we mean by usership. You're not tied to owning a vehicle. All your financial commitments, down payment, EMI if you're taking a loan, service, maintenance, fuel, everything is taken care of in the subscription model, right? Except fuel, everything else is taken care of. Your service, maintenance, insurance, warranty, you name it. All you need to do is pay a monthly subscription fee, whatever it is, depending on the class of the vehicle, and you use the vehicle and give it back. So subscription-based services is going to be one of the biggest drivers. Family structures, right? I mean, we are increasingly seeing, a growth in micro households, right? Single households or 2 people households, right? And that is also going to drive investment. Small cars, for example, right? Small apartments, single bedroom, 2 BHK apartments, high-rise apartments in cities with higher concentration. So it's got a huge far-reaching effect on multiple sectors as well. So that brings me to the next mega trend, innovating to zero. I mentioned this during the beginning, very, very interesting. What does innovating to zero mean? This is a concept or a snapshot of a zero concept world in 2030. Zero emissions, zero accidents, zero waste, zero defects, right? Zero, let's say, I wouldn't say zero, but carbon neutral, zero crime rates. I mean, can we imagine a world where there is zero crime rate, where there is zero email? I mean, can you imagine, living without email? We are already, a lot of companies today are experimenting with the business model where there is no email, right? It's only alternate forms of communication. So, so this is a concept of a zero world. Can we work towards having business models or innovations that will have zero accidents, right? And what is the result of that? You've got advanced driver assistance systems, right? ADAS, as we call it. Can we have zero emissions? What is the consequence of that? Electric vehicles. So electric vehicles, essentially zero emissions from cars, but although you're talking about well-to-wheel emissions, you've got still fossil fuel-based electricity production. Maybe as we move towards renewables, that will become zero as well. So a zero concept world is what we should be aiming at. Now, here are a few examples, right? Of sub-trends, as we can call it: zero malnutrition, zero extreme poverty, zero hunger. Now, these are issues that are very close to us, as Indians. As a developing country, we have faced these challenges in the past decade. So can you, as young entrepreneurs or young business minds, put your heads together and develop something that will address one or multiple of these zero concept visions, right? Like I said, malnutrition, hunger, fatalities, waste, zero carbon, you name it, you can pick and choose whatever you want, right? So that is going to be the way forward. How can we build a world which is going to work towards a zero something environment, right? And that brings me to the next mega trend, the new business model. So now I spoke about a zero world, right? Now a sub segment of that is what some of the companies are doing innovative in India. So we've all heard of value for money, right? Today we are talking about value for money giving rise to or being replaced by value for many. Just imagine, take an example of what Jio has done, right? Jio completely transformed the way mobile telephony, worked in India, or mobile phone ownership in India worked, right? So with their low cost plans, they made mobile phone accessible to the larger masses, right? Similarly, what did, Arvind Eye Care System did, right? They started offering really low cost, affordable eye care solutions. Micromax mobile phones, right? Indigo, just imagine, remember what Indigo did for low cost flying. So similarly, we are going to see value for money being replaced by value for many. So that means any new innovative business model that is going to become applicable for the larger Indian population is going to see traction, right? So today we are not looking at new business models that are restricted to, let's say, certain sections of the society, right? Today we need to go beyond that and ensure, that we can provide these services, solutions, whatever it is, products to as many people as possible. So value for many should, in case, some of you become entrepreneurs going forward, when you start your own businesses, keep this in mind. How can you apply value for many in your new business model, new product, or new service? And that will become your guiding force. Aspirational India, you're all part of aspirational India today, right? You have completely different ways of thinking, than probably what my generation did 20, 30 years ago, right? I mean, 20, 30 years ago, if somebody told me, in 2021, 2022, there will be agricultural equipment sharing, there'll be workspace sharing, apparel sharing, I would have, I would have used some choicest words to say, hey, you got to be kidding, right? But today it's happening. Apparel sharing, I mean, that is a little, extreme to me as well, right? I would never imagine sharing my apparel with somebody else, but that is becoming a very attractive and lucrative business model, right? Obviously, we've seen in India with the likes of, Furlenco or Pepperfry or Grab on Rent. You've got furniture and appliance sharing as well. So everything will be driven on or driven by a shared economy or a shared business model, right? So ownership is going to be, very, very limited. Ownership of anything for that matter, your home, your mobility, your appliances, anything for that matter, is going to be very, very restricted as we go forward. So shared economy is going to be the single biggest driver aspirational India will see or drive, in the next few years. On demand culture as well. I think the classic example is food. Because of the on-demand food, we've seen the online food delivery surge, right, over the past 6, 7, 8 years. With revenues, deliveries, number of users, and app penetration, not from the tier 1 or metro cities, but from the tier 2 and tier 3 cities. So the growth going forward is going to come from, up country India, right? Not your metros and tier 1s, but the likes of, Nagpur, Patna, Kochi, the smaller cities, tier 2, tier 3 cities, they will drive growth going forward. Health, wellness, and well-being, of course, that brings me to the next mega trend. I'll skip this slide. Now, this is very interesting. So as we have seen the human body evolve, we have seen a significant investment in hardware augmentation or biological augmentation. Today you've got wearables, right? Classic example of wearables, or implanting of chips. I mean, who knows? Maybe, you know, in a few years from now, we will already have our first set of bionic humans, right? Where you've got a significant amount of electronics embedded in your body, both external wearables and internal implants, right? They're going to work together in order to bring healthcare services. So keep in mind, the objective of having this is to make healthcare services more accessible, right? More predictable, to ensure there is lesser number of fatalities, for example. It does bring along with it, you know, a darker side. I'm not going to talk about that, but the objective is to make healthcare more accessible to the larger masses. How can you bring affordable healthcare, you know, whether it is through external wearables or internal implants, to a larger section of the population? That should be the objective. What the car makers are doing it in that direction, three ways. One is a built-in way of doing it, you know, where let's say a SIM card is integrated into the vehicle. Then you've got your brought in through your wearables, right? So as you wear, as you get into the car, you bring it in. The third one is cloud enabled. It's called beamed in. So you've got three ways of doing it: built in, brought in, and beamed in. So again, keep in mind, this is not restricted to a car. So this brings along with it connectivity opportunities, right? Telecom opportunities, electronics opportunities, smartphone, smartwatch opportunities. So car, you know, is not anymore isolated, right? So a car or an automobile is going to become a gateway for you to look at new business opportunities, different connections to different sectors, which traditionally, a couple of decades ago, were non-automotive in nature. Today, not the case anymore. So today we are talking about a convergence, blurring of the boundaries between multiple sectors, which is going to give rise to opportunities in new business models as well. The future of mobility, right? You know, that brings me to the last section. The India new mobility market is expected to grow to close to about $100 billion by 2030, right? Everybody knows about taxi services, the Olas and Ubers of the world, which is the largest contributor. What is important is dynamic shuttle, right? You must have heard of companies like Shuttle in the NCR region. Today, we are seeing a lot of investments in companies that are looking at DRT, or demand responsive transit, as we call it. So that means, very simple, the endpoints are not fixed, right? When you book an Ola or an Uber, the endpoints are fixed, right? The start of the journey and the end journey is fixed. But in a dynamic shuttle, the points keep varying as you go. So depending on from where the demand is coming, the app actually smartly adjusts the route and, you know, guides the driver of a vehicle to take multiple routes or different waypoints. So dynamic shuttle again is going to be very, very lucrative, especially for areas like, you know, your Gurgaon's IT sector corridor, where there's a huge concentration of companies. You know, any SEZs, for example, special economic zones, where there's a huge concentration of manufacturing companies. So these geofenced areas will become attractive options there. Micro mobility, again, India is the biggest market. India overtook China 5 years ago to become the world's biggest two-wheeler market. We will see a lot more investment on micro mobility, right? Individual mobility or personal mobility. I mean, look at what the likes of Ather or Ola Electric has done. You know, Ola has been very bullish about their upcoming electric two-wheeler. You know, everybody's waiting to see how they are going to perform. You know, it's a bit of a wait and watch game at the moment. We will see a lot more new entrants as well. We already have the conventional players likes of Bajaj, TVS, Hero, who are already introducing electric two-wheelers, but we also have the new age companies, the likes of Okinawa, Ather, Ola, Smarty, Torque. So you will see a lot more of these smaller companies, bespoke companies, who will start offering micro mobility, personal mobility solutions too. E-hailing, I'll skip. Integrated mobility, again, going forward, it's all about multimodal integrated mobility, right? It's not just, either a motorcycle or a two-wheeler or a passenger car or a taxi or a bus. It's multimodal mobility. I mean, just imagine having a subscription service, a smart car that will give you access to all forms of mobility, right? Two-wheeler sharing, taxis, Olas and Uber, shared mobility, bus, tram, train, metro, you name it. So we are working towards that, where we will have a single subscription based model which will give you access to the entire set of mobility solutions in a city, for example, in a metro city like Delhi, NCR, or Mumbai, where this is going to be applicable. That is the way forward. Certain states have already taken the lead in developing a single subscription based solution, integrated mobility solution, and I'm pretty confident that it's going to be implemented in multiple states as well. The startup ecosystem. So we did a study last year. We mapped about 200 startups in India, automotive startups, looking at a variety of sectors, right? IoT, new mobility, connected solutions, retail, after sales, logistics, EVs, and autonomous vehicles. So you can see there is a whole lot of small and big startups which are seeing significant investment in their respective domains. We did a little bit of a mapping here to see what kind of investments the startups have seen. Logistics and supply chain startups have seen close to 3.2 to 3.3 billion, right? New mobility services have seen about $4.5 billion of investment, right? Retail, after sales, electric vehicles as well, 300, 400, 500 million dollars of funding. This was last year, by the way. This year, I'm sure this number has gone up significantly already. So very clearly, the investments that are being made, keep in mind, are not for product-based solutions. These are all going to be service-based solutions. So service-based solutions is where revenue generation is going to happen. And that is how you will be able to build customer relations for a longer period of time as well, right? Because selling a product is a one-time thing, right? Typical example of a car, right? You buy a car once, but you replace parts, you take the car for the service, you maintain it over a period of 6, 7, 8, maybe even 10 years, right? So that is where the revenue is, building a customer relationship for a longer period of time. Now, the future of mobility, will test dimensions of altitude and speed. Today we are already talking about flying cars, right? Hover bikes. I don't know if you saw a video that has been doing the rounds over the past 24 to 36 hours. A hover bike, right? We've all seen hovercrafts. We've seen hover cars. Now we are talking about hover bikes. So that is one angle to it. The other angle to it is, as you can see at the bottom right, is Hyperloop or high speed rail, right? Japanese maglev, China has already tested. TGV was already there. Hyperloop, classic example of what the concept the IIT Madras team has already put together, right? Why not? When are we going to see a commercial application of Hyperloop? Sooner than later. Then high altitude, high speed as well. We have already seen space being conquered, right? With Virgin, we are going to see space tourism, very, very soon in a commercial manner. Hypersonic, Boeing is already building the hypersonic concept. Who knows, gone are the days of supersonic. We're talking about hypersonic transport. And more on the personal side, we are already talking about air taxis or drone taxis. Cities like Dubai, for example, are already readying themselves for commercial application of air taxis. So personal air taxis from the airport to the city center and so on. So the future of mobility, like I said, is going to expand in all directions: speed, altitude, low speed, high speed, and so on and so forth. And that is where, again, over land, water, and air. 4 future scenarios of mobility. Today, we are already talking about multimodal mobility, right? Like I said before, whether it is shared mobility, public transport, personal mobility, micro mobility, we are already there. The next step is platformization, having a single platform or a single subscription where you can access multiple modes. Further, you're talking about technological singularity, right? You know, as a consumer, when you move from one mode of mobility to another, your entire set of personalization, customization options get transferred, right? It's technological singularity. It does not matter which mode of transport you're going to choose, but your personalization will always be there with you. And really into the future, we're talking about transcendental mobility, right? You know, like as the picture shows, it could be flying taxis, flying cars, flying motorbikes, flying bicycles, you name it, right? So this is the way we look at the future of mobility. To summarize, uh, mobility, like I said before, is not what we had 20, 30 years ago. It is not just a car manufacturer, a component manufacturer, a service center, or a garage, right? This is going to open up multiple opportunities for you across sectors, whether it is IT, healthcare, connectivity, infrastructure as well. And that should be your focus, looking at any of these sectors that is going to give you an opportunity to start offering new business models, new services, and new solutions. So I'm going to stop now. Happy to take questions. We still have about 10, 15 minutes. Please feel free. I'm happy to, do my best answering any of the questions you may have.
Thank you so much, sir. And before opening the floor for the question and answer, I myself have a question. And traditionally, I feel that automotive industry, any company, and the customer journey in that particular industry is actually separated from one another. For example, buying is a different journey, and servicing is a different journey, and while using it becomes a different journey.
Yeah.
I would like to know how the companies are working on and integrating all these journeys, and what is the outcome of it, and how analytics helps to improvise the automotive field or product as a whole.
Yeah, good question, Sarveshwar. So I'll answer this with an example. You know, today what the likes of Hyundai, for example, or Mahindra are doing is they are digitizing the entire customer journey. So, like you rightly said earlier, the vehicle buying experience, ownership experience, service experience were all disconnected. Today, they are going to become a seamless, integrated journey, end-to-end journey. That means right from your initial research, when you go to a website, you research for what car you want, what features, what variants you want. That is the earliest stage, number one. Number two, then you talk about personalization. Okay, I want this color, I want this variant, I want these accessories, I want to pick and choose my finance option. I want to pick this particular bank, this particular finance provider. This is my tenure, blah, blah, blah. Everything about personalization. Then picking and choosing your time and place of delivery, whether you want it delivered at home, even before that, maybe even your test drive. The test drive could happen at your home at a time, of your convenience. Then the delivery happens at home. Then you're talking about maintenance and service, which is also on an app. Today, the likes of Mahindra or Hyundai already are having apps where you can actually schedule a service. You can schedule a routine service. You can schedule a maintenance service, accident repair, you name it, right? So the entire journey, end to end, right from expressing interest to purchase a vehicle, to customization, to test drive, purchase, service, and maintenance, is going to be a seamless digital experience, right? And that is what the OEMs are doing today. So the silos that you mentioned earlier are not going to be there anymore. These pillars are going to become interconnected, and that is what today, even not just the OEMs, the likes of Carvale, Car Dekho, right, are also looking to do, right? Maybe even in the new vehicle segment and also in the used vehicle segment. Again, the used car market in India, a huge opportunity. So I think going forward, it's going to be one seamless integrated experience end to end.
Thank you, sir. And if you have any questions, please raise your hands. And Jagan, you can go ahead.
Hello, sir.
Hi, Jagan.
It was a pleasure having you here, sir. Sir, I am from oil and gas domain. Okay, and as you know, like in the construction industry, safety is one of the major KPIs.
Yeah.
That is being followed because out in the project management, if there is one accident, that's it. The project halts and it goes with the other vendors. So, when you're talking about the zero accidents, yes, it's fine with automotive industry. But zero accidents at construction industry is one of my vision and dream as well. How to come up with that kind of solutions? Is there any idea with you?
I wish I had a simple answer to that question, man. But definitely, it's a fairly complex ecosystem there. When you talk about the construction industry, you're talking about a lot of unrelated, sectors coming in: energy, transport, real estate, financing, and so on. So I don't have a ready answer to your question, but what is going to be a challenge, as I see there, is how do you create a platform or an ecosystem that will bring all the non-automotive stakeholders together as well? Instead of non-automotive, I would say non-oil and gas stakeholders as well, right? I'll give you an example. When we talk about the automotive industry today, when we create a platform, we are talking about bringing on board insurance players, healthcare service providers, intellectual property companies. I mean, who would have thought lawyers or intellectual property companies playing a part in the automotive ecosystem 10 years ago? Nobody would have thought of it, but today it's happening because of electrification, because of autonomous vehicles coming in. Intellectual property is becoming a very, very hot subject. So I think the ecosystem itself will evolve. So as an entrepreneur, if you want to make a vision for that, your objective should be very, very simple, which is how do you create that platform or an ecosystem which will bring on board all related stakeholders. Your vision of having a zero accident or a zero fatality will eventually become a reality on its own. The bottom line is you need to create that environment first. Once you do that, logically, the logical eventuality will be a zero accident or a zero fatality scenario.
Thanks for the idea, sir.
Jugal Krishna.
Thank you, sir. I have a question regarding this electric vehicles. So there are many youngsters, they prefer super bikes just because of the sound. So if we produce electric vehicles, we are going to disappoint them. So in your view, what do you suggest? Should we disappoint them, or we'll find an alternate solution?
Yeah, that's a good question. Jugal, I'm a petrol head, right? Anything about cars and motorcycles excite me. I have been a petrol head ever since my school days and college days. I still have a 35-year-old two-stroke in my garage, right? But having said that, if you drive a good electric vehicle, whether a two-wheeler or a car, you will not go back. Trust me. I've had the opportunity to drive a Tesla, elsewhere, and it changed my perception. I was with Nissan for a couple of years. When I drove the Nissan Leaf in Japan, a souped-up Nissan Leaf, by the way, yeah, a competition Nissan Leaf, it completely blew my mind. So even though you're talking about sound is just one element. It is the overall performance of the vehicle that makes a difference. Today, electric cars can outperform any gasoline or diesel powered vehicle very, very easily. Trust me, right? So for a speed freak, for an adrenaline junkie, if you want to call it, an electric vehicle is actually going to offer a lot more, much more than what your conventional vehicle will offer. So I don't think that is going to be a challenge at all. When these people, who you mentioned, get the opportunity to experience an electric vehicle, it will change their perception. So the future is going to be electric, whether you like it or not, right? Like I said, I'm a petrol head. I'm very disappointed that the future will be electric, but I'm very confident that I'm not going to be there when the entire world goes electric, right? So that way you don't have to worry about performance or your adrenaline fix that is going to come even from an electric vehicle. That's what I would say.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, Prashant, you can go ahead.
Hello, sir. Thanks for the insightful session. So I have this one question in my mind that I would like to ask. So like looking at the rapid growth rate in the population and the lesser available space on roads, what do you think will be the greatest challenge for the surface automobile industry in the coming years?
Yeah, it's a good question, Prashant. So, like I said before, individual or personal mobility is going to give way to shared mobility, right? So that is what I meant when I said ownership-based business models will give way to usership-based business models. So you don't have to necessarily own the vehicle because the number of vehicles will go down, but the usage of these vehicles will increase. Today, when you talk about a personal car or a personal vehicle, how many hours in a day is it actually on the road? In the morning when you go from work to office, in the evening when you come back from office to work. 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours if you are stuck in a traffic jam. 4 out of 24, that is 1 in 6. That is the usage of a personal vehicle. If you look at shared mobility, you are talking about a vehicle, being on the road 18 to 20 hours a day. So you are increasing asset utilization here, right? When you move from ownership-based business models to usership-based business models, you're not necessarily reducing the distance traveled. You're not reducing the usage, the kilometers driven, but you are reducing the number of vehicles, and at the same time, you're increasing the asset utilization of the fleet. So that is where the car makers are also looking at how can you improve asset utilization, how can you increase returns from the same fleet of vehicles without necessarily increasing. So the transition from the ownership to usership based business models is going to be the driver, although revenue generation will go up even with a smaller set of vehicles on the road. That's what that's what I would say to your question.
Thanks, sir.
Ekta.
Thank you so much, sir, for your insightful
Ekta.
session. Yeah. So with the EV coming up, and we know that charging infrastructure is a major problem. We have many players stepping in, like Power is coming up. And at the same time, companies like Ather are also establishing their own network. So what strategy should traditional OEMs like Bajaj or Hero should adopt to be competitive and at the same time, cater to this charging infrastructure problem?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question, Ekta. So there are, again, multiple angles of looking at it. One, especially if you're talking about two-wheelers, right? You already have a charging infrastructure at home, right? All you need is a simple 15 amp socket that is going to help you charge the vehicle. A lot of people talk about it. Just imagine this. Today, all of you have smartphones and mobile phones. When you have an important call coming up or an important class coming up or a lecture coming up, you make sure you charge your mobile phone, right? Before that. So you make sure you allocate enough time to charge the mobile phone for that particular application, for that particular use. Similar thing with an electric vehicle as well. If you know you're going to use a vehicle in the next few hours or tomorrow morning, you will ensure you have it charged the previous night. So it is just a matter of tuning yourself to something very similar, right? Because you're used to it with an electronic device. You just need to translate it to an electric vehicle. That's number one. Number two, we are also looking at innovative business models like battery swapping, for example, right? I must have heard about Sun Mobility's battery swapping initiative, right? So if you're talking about fleets, right, you don't have to worry about a charging infrastructure everywhere, right? If you have a fleet of 20, 30 vehicles, you can invest in a battery swapping station where you just go in, remove your old battery, put in a new one, and you're off, right? You don't have to wait. It's probably quicker than your conventional fueling at the gas station or a petrol station. So that's number two. The third one is going forward, it will probably become mandatory for all real estate developers to install public charging stations in their facilities. Whether it is a residential facility or a commercial facility, you will need to allocate certain space for electric vehicle charging. Once that becomes mandatory, you will see enough and more charging stations everywhere you go. So the entire challenge or the question about range anxiety, right, is going to go away. If you start seeing more and more charging facilities and charging stations, that perception will go away. So I think there are multiple angles to it, right? So it's never a question of one solution fits all or a one size fits all kind of a thing, right? Every use case will have a different solution. So it's just a combination of multiple things working together to create this environment where electric mobility is going to become mainstream and dispel all myths and misconceptions that many of the customers have today.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. I see we are near the end of the session. Can we take 2 more questions?
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah.
Vibhas one, I should go one after this. Thank you.
Good evening, sir. Thanks for your time. Sir, you mentioned about drones, and we have seen how the drone industry has progressed in the last couple of years. And in India, we have seen the drone laws being changed and liberalized and eased out. So, sir, but then as I understand, we have seen mostly drones being used in the manned airspace and not beyond line of sight. So, sir, as per you, I mean, when are we expecting the manned aircrafts going hand in hand with the drones? Basically, the drones being used in the unmanned airspace as well as the manned airspace.
Right. So I'm not very well versed with the regulations related to drones, but I can tell you, from the mobility perspective, that what the OEMs are doing today is working with the policymakers and the regional governments to allocate airspace or air corridors, as we call it, for drones as well, for manned aerial transport, as they call it, low altitude manned aerial transport. So it's just a matter of working with the governments to allocate that space and then develop an infrastructure which talks about monitoring the air traffic. Similar to your air traffic control, you will need an infrastructure to monitor air traffic for drones as well, manned drones as well. So that's the second angle. Third angle is to have dedicated corridors. Let's say between the New Delhi airport and Chandni Chowk, for example. I'm just giving an example, or between New Delhi airport and the Gurugram business center. So identifying air corridors is the third angle. So I think all these three need to come together in order to see commercial success or commercialization of manned aerial transport. But we are going to get there sooner than later, because I know quite a few private players and the government as well are very keen on commercializing this, at least for pilot applications. Maybe later for mass market applications, but at least to begin with, we will see pilot applications very, very soon.
Okay, sir.
Good evening, sir. Thank you for this session. I want, as you know, that these ADAS systems are becoming rage, and the OEMs are investing heavily in ADAS systems, and it will be an emerging technology of the future. I wanted to understand how much these ADAS systems can contribute to the goal of shared mobility, and will that be totally dependent on ADAS system to realize the goal of shared mobility? I mean, to make the ADAS systems and autonomous driving feasible, will that be really necessary for shared mobility?
Absolutely. See, ADAS is always looked at as a stepping stone to autonomous driving, right?
Yes, sir.
With level 4, level 5 ADAS, you're already looking at autonomous driving. So
yes,
once you're looking at autonomous driving, you are going to look at shared mobility as well. So just imagine, you're all in your 20s. You probably, most of you already have driving licenses. Just imagine your children in about 15, 20 years time may not even need to have a driving license. They may not even learn how to drive because it won't be necessary. Right? With autonomous vehicles coming in, I mean, for me, it is unimaginable. I mean, if 10 years ago somebody told me, hey, Kaushik, you may not know how to drive at all 20, 30 years down the line, I would have laughed at them, right? But that is going to be a reality soon. So the need for a driving license, the need to learn how to drive or know how to drive is going to completely go away. And that is going to be a result of a combination of shared mobility and autonomous driving. So ADAS will become a stepping stone. Today, we already have OEMs in India talking about ADAS technologies, level 1, level 2, level 2.5 ADAS technologies. They are investing in it. Today in India, you must have seen the likes of MG Hector, MG Gloucester already coming with ADAS technologies, Aster as well. So the companies are introducing these technologies, but the infrastructure is lagging. So infrastructure is in a catch-up mode. But once that happens, we will see a lot more of these technologies coming in, and eventually it will combine the need for shared mobility and autonomous driving and bring it together. That's the way we're looking at it.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. So with this, we have come to the end of this fantastic session. The session gradually moved from the future of Indian economy to connectivity and convergence, then urbanization, innovating to zero models and new business models, and to the future of mobility. I'm sure that for everyone, the word mobility means a lot more than what it was before the session. So it has been an absolute honor to host you this evening. Once again, I would like to thank you for sparing your valuable time and being so patient through this Q&A session. So thank you so much again.
Thank you very much, Sarvesh. I mean, it's been an absolute pleasure. I really love interacting with you. So at any point in time, please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Any questions you have, please feel free to ask. I'll be happy to answer them. So all the very best to you. Like I said, you're all going to be entrepreneurs very soon. So don't have any restrictions in the way, you think. There are a lot of opportunities out there. Industries are converging today. So don't restrict yourself, keep your mind open, and I'm sure you will have a lot of success. All the very best to every one of you. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir.